I never really felt like I was truly living until I turned 64. One day, I caught myself wondering, David, what held me back all those years? What did I miss out on? The questions felt like both a wake up call and a gentle nudge toward something new. Bruce, my step grandson, didn't say anything as he stood nearby. He just watched me, his gaze full of quiet support, which gave me courage. Slowly, I reached out and grabbed the straps, hesitating before finally pulling them down. Oh, hi there. I didn't see you. Let me back up and tell the whole story. It's one worth sharing. It's at 64, life felt quiet, even a little stagnant. My husband David had passed away 12 years earlier, and since then, loneliness had become an uninvited companion. But one late morning, I decided to tackle a task I'd been avoiding for years, cleaning out the basement. That cluttered, musty space held memories from a lifetime, and just the thought of stepping in there made my chest tighten. But I did it anyway. As I opened the first box, I found something unexpected, an old photo album. Flipping through, it was like stepping into another world. Um, One picture stopped me in my tracks. Um, uh, a snapshot from a beach party decades ago. Um, there I was, holding a margarita, laughing in a bright orange bikini. I looked so carefree, so full of joy. For a moment, I didn't recognize that younger version of myself. As I stared at the picture, a mix of feelings washed over me: nostalgia, longing, even a touch of sadness. That was when I heard a noise behind me. Turning around, I saw Bruce standing at the basement door. It had been 4 years since I'd last seen him. He was all grown up now, broader, more mature, with that same familiar smile. Surprise, he said, raising a coffee cup. Ruth, when did you get here? I asked, genuinely delighted to see him. Just now, he replied, walking down the stairs. I saw your car outside and thought I'd drop in. Looks like you could use some help. Before I could protest, he was already beside me, glancing at the album in my hands. What's this? He asked, picking up the photo before I could stop him. For a moment, Bruce just stared at the picture of me on the beach. Then he looked up. Uh, his expression, a mix of surprise and admiration. Is this you? He asked, almost in disbelief. Well, yeah, I said, laughing nervously. That was me during my wilder years. Wow, he said, his eyes shifting back to the photo. It's so weird to imagine you like this, but honestly, it's kind of amazing. His words caught me off guard. There was something about the way he said it, so genuine, almost reverent, that stirred feelings I hadn't felt in years. Memories and emotions I thought I'd buried with time suddenly bubbled to the surface. But I quickly brushed it off. Enough with the trip down memory lane, I said, closing the album. Let's start hauling these boxes out of here. Before I could move, Bruce gently stopped me. Wait, he said with a soft smile. We really should look through this. It's incredible seeing you like this. So young, so vibrant. I hesitated. Some of the pictures in that album weren't just carefree. They were bold, even daring. But seeing the curiosity and admiration in Bruce's eyes, I couldn't say no. That's enough for now, I said with a small smile. Some of these photos might be a bit much. Bruce laughed and nodded. I'm sure, he said, settling beside me with the album on his lap. His breath was close enough to almost touch my skin as we flipped through the pages. The carefree beach party photos gave way to snapshots from my college years, showing me in nightclubs. One photo caught my attention, a picture of me in a backless red dress, dancing, a little tipsy. Bruce lingered on that one, staring at it for a little too long. Is this really you? He asked, his eyes flicking between the photo and me, clearly fascinated. Bruce was quiet for a moment, then said, "You're incredible." He paused before adding, "All this time, I've only thought of you as my grandmother, but you are like a total party girl." His words made me blush, but they also stirred something inside me. I thought about how David had never shown me that kind of admiration, not even when I was younger. He'd always been distant, cold, and strict, but Bruce was different. The way he looked at me, um, there was something more than words could express. As we kept flipping through the album, the photos got bolder. One showed me laughing with friends, wearing a bikini top and shorts. Another captured me dancing in a nightclub in a plunging black dress, and I was wearing with a mind-blowing. Bruce smiled softly. "It's a privilege to see these. Even when you were younger, your beauty was breathtaking." David was one lucky man. His words warmed me, but they also sparked something else, a strange feeling I hadn't expected. The more I felt Bruce's attention, the more I realized there was a pull between us. Um, he was the kind of man I had dreamed of in my youth, confident, openly admiring, eager to uncover parts of me I had kept hidden. When we reached the last page, Bruce closed the album, but didn't look away from me. "Elizabeth," he said, his voice low, "you're truly extraordinary." I was surprised by his words. It had been so long since anyone had looked at me like that or said something like that. As our eyes locked, I felt the air between us grow thicker, charged. There was a warmth rising inside me, despite the cold, dusty basement. Bruce's presence made me feel young again, but at the same time, I had no idea where these feelings were leading me. Bruce closed the album and turned to face me. His gaze was still full of admiration. "Elizabeth," he said, his voice sincere, "after seeing all those pictures, I have to say, you haven't aged a day. You still look young and absolutely beautiful." But the compliment took me by surprise. Even when I was younger, I wasn't used to hearing such things, especially not from David. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt my cheeks warm. "Thank you, Bruce," I said, gathering my thoughts. "But there's no hiding the fact that I've aged." I paused, then added, gathering my courage. "Maybe I've gotten older, but I haven't lost touch with my desires. I haven't let go of them." "Oh," he safered. Bruce smiled, his green eyes steady on mine. "I can feel that," he said. "You're not just beautiful. You're absolutely captivating." I couldn't help but let my eyes wander over him for a moment. His broad, athletic frame, his tall stature, and slightly curled blonde hair made him look like someone right out of a movie. But what struck me the most was the confident yet gentle expression in his eyes. "It's interesting hearing that from someone like you," I said with a faint smile. "David was nothing like you. He was always calm, distant. He never did anything to truly surprise or excite me. He was a good man, but Bruce tilted his head, listening intently. Um, but not the kind of man you desired, right?" I hesitated, but then looked at him. "Yeah," I said honestly. "David was never as exciting or passionate as I wished he could be. I'm not saying he was a bad man, but I always felt like something was missing." Bruce was quiet for a moment before offering a gentle, confident smile. "Maybe it's important you realize that," he said. "Maybe now's the time to figure out what fills that." His words lit a spark inside me. The way he was showing interest, understanding me, and speaking with such confidence stirred something I hadn't felt in years. In that moment, I realized Bruce wasn't just different from David, he was closer to the kind of man I used to dream about. But I didn't know where these feelings would take me or if they were the right direction. After a pause, Bruce stood up and slid his hands into his pockets. His green eyes locked on mine again. "I'm going to put the bike in the garage and come right back," he said, his voice steady. "But don't stay in the basement. Wait for me in the living room, okay?" The confidence in his tone and the way he took charge left an unusual effect on me. I nodded slightly, unsure of what was happening, but unable to deny the pull I felt. Um, all right, I said softly, still feeling a mix of emotions. Bruce walked upstairs, and as I watched him go, I couldn't help but think about how his love for his motorcycle was affecting me. I imagined how he might look working on it or riding it, full of energy and passion. He was exactly the kind of man I'd once dreamed of when I was younger. "He's so much like the man I always imagined," I murmured to myself, but then reminded myself, he's my step-grandson. And yet, right now, he was having a real effect on me. Hmm. I moved to the living room and waited. It wasn't long before Bruce came back, holding a bottle of wine. The moment I saw the label, I recognized it instantly. It was my favorite, rosé. I had no idea how he knew or why he'd thought of it, but again, I felt that spark inside me. "I got this from the best place I could find," he said with a small smile. "I hope you like it." "Like it," I said, surprised. "Bruce, this is my favorite wine. How did you know?" I He shrugged, a thoughtful look crossing his face. Um, I guess I remembered little things when I was younger. He's qu- His attention to such details was deeply touching. "Bruce," I said softly, "this wine is really special and so thoughtful. Thank you." He opened the bottle and poured us both a glass, handing one to me. "Let's share some good memories tonight, Elizabeth," he said. We raised our glasses and toasted. As I took the first sip, the taste of the rosé danced on my tongue. I couldn't stop my eyes from finding Bruce. He wasn't just attractive, but the way he thought, how he carried himself, it was magnetic. When our glasses were nearly empty, Bruce's gaze met mine again, full of warmth. I felt something stirring inside me. Fear and excitement all mixed together, but still no clear idea where it was going. Suddenly, Bruce paused. He set his glass down on the table, his eyes more intense than before. "Elizabeth," he said, his voice low but full of emotion, "I can't stop myself when I look at you. You're not just beautiful, you're so much more than I ever imagined." His words hit me deeply, making my face flush. "Bruce, I started, but before I could finish, he leaned in. My heart raced, and even though I knew I should pull back, I couldn't resist the powerful pull I felt toward him. His lips met mine, slow, deliberate, but also full of feeling. It was gentle, yet deep, and suddenly all the desires I'd buried over the years flooded back. As his hands moved to my waist, I allowed myself to give in to the moment. When he pulled away, the tension lingered in the air. My heart was still pounding, and I looked at him, unable to put my emotions into words. But something inside me couldn't stop. It urged me to lean in and kiss him again. This time, it was my move. The kiss was more passionate now, as Bruce responded quickly. His hand slid around my waist, pulling me closer with a gentle, firm touch. I could feel the warmth of his body against mine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt alive again. As we lay on the couch, side by side, there was barely any space between us. His presence, his breath, everything about him filled the moment. But as my heart kept racing, It wasn't fear or hesitation, it was desire, a desire to let go completely. I slowly sat up, feeling Bruce's calm gaze on me. His eyes were focused, intense, and somehow I knew he understood everything I was feeling without a word being spoken. With a deep breath, I stood, my heart pounding. I couldn't ignore the powerful urge taking over me. I moved my hands to the thin straps of my dress, which suddenly felt like chains holding me back. Bruce didn't speak, just watched me with steady, supportive eyes. His silent encouragement gave me the courage I needed. Slowly, I slid the straps down. The dress slipped off my shoulders, falling gently to the floor. The fabric of my dress pooled softly around my bare feet, and for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe. It wasn't just taking off my clothes. It felt like shedding years of restraint, like freeing myself from all the limits I had imposed. When I looked back at Bruce, I saw the admiration in his eyes, clear and undeniable. He didn't have to say anything, he understood. This moment wasn't just about us. It was about me breaking through my own barriers and accepting who I really am. Bruce stood up slowly, reaching out his hand to me. His touch was both tender and strong, but this time, it wasn't just about holding him. It was about holding all of myself. For a full 15 minutes, I sat there, barely moving, caught in a whirl of emotions. I felt like I was on the edge of passing out, but somehow I held on. Maybe it was the years of longing that had built this strange resilience in me. Bruce's presence was overwhelming. His broad frame had always drawn me in, but now the intensity of my attraction was beyond anything I could have imagined. I was breathless, like the world had melted away, and all that was left was him. My heart was racing, my body trembling, and every inch of me felt his impact. For the first time in my life, I felt physically exhausted, but in the most exhilarating way. It wasn't a limit anymore, it was liberation. As I tried to process it all, a thought quietly surfaced in my mind. I hadn't truly lived until now. All those years with David, what what had he held me back from? What had I denied myself? It was a question that felt both rebellious and like a long overdue awakening. Rue, still catching his breath, ran a hand through his hair. Seeing how affected he was too somehow made me feel better. He smiled faintly, fixing his hair, and said in a low voice, "I'm going to take a shower." The spark in his eyes and the calm determination in his voice made everything feel even more real. I watched Bruce walk away, but my mind stayed focused on what had just happened and the bittersweet joy of finally discovering this part of myself. If you've made it this far, I know my story has made an impact on you. There's so much more to share, and you won't want to miss any of it. Be sure to hit that follow button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment about what you think. I can't wait to hear from you. Your support means everything to me.